Today is all about AI games and how they're going to affect Steam, Kickstarter campaigns in 2024, and of course, high-speed hoverboarding adventure game, OVERRRIDER. Let's get into it. As I look at headlines over the last year or two, I think I see a lot more headlines about people drawing a line in the sand between indie and AAA, right? Like the divide is getting bigger and bigger where people are like, I'm only playing indie or I'm only playing AAA. And as I look at that, I wonder what that's going to look like over the next couple of years and how that's going to affect indie games, indie game developers. But what's the end game for this? How do you think this plays out over the next couple of years as people kind of slowly draw apart from these two distinctly different sides of the industry?
Honestly, every time anybody tries to draw any kind of forecasts, they end up being completely wrong.
That's fair.
But what I can say right now is that the game industry has been consolidating for a while. This happens not only in terms of the studios, but also the game outsourcing, because there's been a huge business in the backstage in terms of game outsourcing. Like a lot of studios are not making their own games, but they're offering outsourcing services for programming, animation, 3D art, whatever. And this has been happening for a while. Companies have been merging into bigger companies. And now more than ever, I think that the market for indies is getting tougher and tougher. It's getting really tough to enter it because everything right now is held by big publishers, big companies with huge marketing budgets, and everybody in terms of content creators, they are interested in covering big titles, which can also sponsor their media portals or whatever their medium is. As such, indies, they usually don't have this marketing budget. So I think that the divide is probably going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And at some point, I don't want to say that, but unless something tips over, maybe being an indie is really not going to be possible. It's a little bit of a dark opinion, but I think that the era of indies is kind of coming to an end as it is right now. Maybe we'll transform into something else, but right now in the scene it's really interesting. But also the fact that there was definitely a bubble in this industry, mostly due to the pandemic. Everybody was playing games, everybody was investing in games, and now we have something like a recession where massive layoffs are happening, studios are closing. So just to give you a perspective, Microsoft laid out, I think, almost 2,000 employees. Sony laid out 900, sorry. EA close to 700. And even Unity, the engine that we're using, they also laid out something close to 2,000. So
I have to wonder why that's happening. And I know, there's politics that goes into it. Obviously, there's, the money portion of it where companies can't afford to keep these developers on. But it is confusing to me why you wouldn't get a staff, keep a staff, and then maintain it and grow it. I mean, that would seem more sustainable to me. And I mean, from an indie perspective, an indie studio doesn't typically turn over like that, right? You can get contractors and stuff, but you're not swapping everybody out for the next game. It's just not plausible. So for me, it just doesn't make sense from a logical standpoint for AAA to do that. I don't know. What are your thoughts on why that happens?
For an indie studio where the team is very small, the team really matters. If you change one person in the team, this is going to resonate within the entire team. For an indie studio, this is a big challenge. Building the right team is very important in terms of avoiding toxicity, being able to cooperate with each other, being able to communicate, being able to find a good workflow together and just be a team and be together and be strong. And just, removing a small part of that team is just like removing a vital organ. But in big studios, in big companies in general, they can afford to hire a lot of people. And when they hire a lot of people, I'm telling this from the perspective of someone who knows a lot of people who are working in bigger studios. Sometimes the case is that the people who get hired, they don't do a lot of work. I've heard stories about people who are there, they do some work, and then there's other people who have to chime in and then correct their work, which sounds completely unproductive to me. But in big companies, I think this kind of low-level fine-tune type of management is really not possible. So maybe this is what we're seeing right right now. Big companies just shedding some dead weight.
Yeah, and I've heard people say things like, larger studios, they have somebody who does everything, right? There's like, the 3D animation artist, and then there's the person who does the polish work on it, and then there's somebody who actually animates the character, and then there's somebody like, there's so many layers and layers on the same part of the job, right? Whereas indie, like there's one person that does all of that, right? They design the character, right. They bring it into the actual game itself. And so like maybe that's where they see an opportunity to shed fat, like you had said, and then just replace it and refresh it with somebody who is probably, I'm assuming, somebody who is cheaper or potentially somebody who they think might have a better skill set for the next game they're creating. But when I think about that, like you said, like when somebody new comes into the studio, I have to imagine they're at a huge disadvantage because they don't know the culture, they don't know the people around them really, they don't know what's expected out of the gate, and there's that learning curve. And by the time they get up to task, I mean, you're halfway through development at that point, and then they're 6 months away from being fired at that point again. And I think the problem also is that so many people want to create games and be in AAA studios that they get away with a lot because of that. But how do you see that narrative like shifting in a way, or do you see that narrative shifting at all?
I don't know exactly what drives. Like I know they're driven by data.
Yeah.
And at the top of the pyramid is nothing related to games at all. Like it's all business and it's all customers. It's all user acquisition, etc. Mm-hmm. But if you look at history, something that keeps on not working and getting progressively worse and worse and worse at some point is bound to spark a revolution. So maybe we can see a resurgence of indie games in future, mm-hmm. and then AAA studios falling out. This is actually quite much possible, I think, because right now, the AAA titles that are coming out, I've been hearing a lot of negative opinions from players. Yeah. Basically, everything is about money. Everything is about milking the player.
Yep.
And in this, basically the games suffer, the game experiences suffer. Mm-hmm. So maybe AAA games might lose their player base at some point, and then maybe we can see a resurgence of something else. Maybe the two AA games or something else.
Same topic, but different side of that coin. You think, well, as AAA kind of loses its integrity and people, they have pushback because these games aren't what they expected. They're releasing half-baked, and, the list goes on and on. But then the Valve comes out and they say, hey, we're going to let AI created games on Steam this year in 2024 because they weren't allowed in 2023. And there was a reason for that, because those games were not good, and they were, just usually they were carbon copies of other games, or they were just terrible games. And you're watering down the market so much, in my opinion, where people who want to go play indie, what happens then, right? Because you're burying so many other games created by indie developers who desperately need those sales. So what happens, right? What happens in 2024 as this plays out, as AI games start releasing on Steam?
The game market right now is so much saturated. I was looking at some statistics. It was like in 2021, it was roughly 800 games a month released on Steam only.
Just insane.
So that adds up to like 10,000 games per year. So there you have like a gaming market with users constantly being blasted with all sorts of different content.
Yeah.
And now that AI games are stepping in the scene, this is going to get unbearable, I think. What's happening to our studio personally, a couple of months earlier in February, we discovered a game on Steam which had the exact same name like our game. Even down to the logo, where like our logo is like it's a single word split in two and just like one part over the other. And then we see another game with the same name, with the logo like that. Steam was like, okay, well, it's not against our rules. We don't care about that. Go deal with this situation yourself. And this has been like haunting us because players are already confusing our game with the other game. We also encountered a bug on Twitch where we made a category for a game on Twitch, but if you open it on your mobile device, it opens the other game because for some reason it doesn't check the casing of the letters. And because their name is the same but like different case letters, this sends our viewers to their category. So stuff like that is already happening, and we posted on Reddit, TikTok, everywhere. Everybody was saying, oh yeah, that's an AI game. I don't know if this is true. I cannot seem to get a hold of the developer and find out what the case is exactly, because they're based in China. So this kind of thing is happening. And yeah, this is like a first-person perspective of the whole thing. Being an indie right now it's really, really difficult. And we'll just keep pushing it and trying to do our best, because what I believe is this game, the game that we're making, is made with heart and soul and thought into it, and with a lot of player feedback. And we have tailored it very meticulously to be something that our players would like, and to have a human factor in our game. Kickstarter has also kind of turned into something really weird. Like, it wasn't like what it was in 2012, 2015, where you actually are funding your project to make it work. Right now, you need to have something working, something already at least halfway done, in order to get any success on Kickstarter, because the customer base of Kickstarter, I say, would be really end user / players who are looking for rewards, looking for experiences. If you just present a concept and no working demo or no working prototype or everything, first of all, people are also very used to scams on Kickstarter, because that has been happening throughout the year. So it's understandable that they would be reluctant to back something that's really super early into the development stage. But what developers are doing, basically, they're showing an almost finished version or something that looks exactly as the final product. What they're doing is basically they're setting a very low goal. Funding goals are like $20,000 or $30,000 or whatever. It's a very low funding goal. Usually this funding goal only kind of covers marketing, but people would say, we're going to use that for development. Yeah, they probably going to use some of it for development, but honestly, if you subtract all the taxes, the fees, VAT, whatever, you really get something that is really minuscule from Kickstarter. So what I think is happening on Kickstarter right now is it's kind of a marketing tool and a cash injection, but it rarely serves to help develop the full game. Now, what our team is doing, to be completely transparent, is we have also set a low funding goal. And we did this because we got advised by a lot of agencies who are dealing with Kickstarter projects, and also other campaign owners who have run successful campaigns. They said, you know what, you should try to strive for a lower goal. And in doing so, your goal is to fund that as quickly as possible. Not just like reach a funding goal in 30 days, but like reach your funding goal as soon as possible. If that happens, Kickstarter would promote your campaign. You have news to share because you are 100% funded in like 55 days or 10 days or whatever. This is actually newsworthy, and this is what's lucrative on Kickstarter. Or so we've been told. And I'd say that right now on Kickstarter, a big portion of the backers for the project is coming actually from fellow Bulgarian studios who are trying to support us, who want to make us succeed. And this is just like really awesome, because we see that support, and it really feels like we are here like a small community, and it's kind of trying to unite, which is amazing. And such communities are actually already forming in Europe, like our neighboring countries like Romania, Poland, which is not a neighboring country, but it's kind of close to us. Even Serbia, they all have game associations that are forming. And for Poland, the Game Association has been doing wonders and has been putting them on the map. So I think that small companies need something like this, because we need to kind of get head to head with the consolidation of the market.
Do you think developers need a publisher nowadays? Like, I'm not talking about like a solo developer who's creating a small, platformer or whatever, but like a larger scale game, maybe, higher indie to maybe, AA, that mid-tier level. Do you need a publisher to be successful in today's market?
The answer, as the question is posed, no, but only if you are very good with the social game, you're already popular and your game gets traction. Like, for example, Lethal Company, it's like made with by one guy. I was honestly at the beginning struggling to understand how this game kind of made it out. Okay. Because honestly, it doesn't look good. I'm sorry, I'm not here to trash. It just objectively doesn't look good. And it's an awesome game. It's an awesome concept. And people just kind of got into it, and that was amazing. But that's also luck. So this guy didn't need a publisher to do that. I think in smaller cases where teams just put a lot of work out on marketing and they kind of make it, that's still an okay result. Like, you don't need a publisher to do that. You also don't need a publisher at any cost. That's really important. So we've had bad experience with publishers. I know people who had bad experience with publishers, bad deals and everything.
Yeah.
You cannot afford to just become a slave of a publisher or anybody else. So you don't need a publisher at any cost. But the right publisher for your game can make wonders for you, and it can help you focus only on developing the game while somebody else is going to take care of the marketing and the selling and the user acquisition, which is amazing. Your studio doesn't have to deal with this. Working with a publisher has to be considered it's a partnership. You are two equally righted partners in this, and you have to have mutual interest and you have to work together.
That takes us to the game, right? So OVERRRIDER, just talk to me about what players can expect. As it's gone through its evolution, it's changed. It's something a little bit more fast-paced. You've really taken that player feedback into account. What is the gameplay? Is there a story in there? I mean, there's a lot of moving parts in this game, so walk me through all of it really quick.
OVERRRIDER is it's focused on movement. Your main gameplay element is going to be dealing with the movement mechanics, and as such, we have made sure that the movement mechanics are top-notch. It's a hoverboarding roguelike game. It's a hardcore game for hardcore players who are willing to get in the game and try to figure out the intricacies of the title and the ins and outs. Your only weapon against a robotic onslaught is your hoverboard. And in OVERRRRIDER, you're gonna join a young inventor on a high-speed journey as she tries to get back home and save her family. You explore procedurally generated worlds. The setting of the game is a post-apocalyptic Earth, thousands of years after our civilization ends, which ends because of greed and capitalism and all the things that we've been discussing right now.
Who would have thought? Yeah.
And basically, your riding skills and your speed kind of define where you can go, what you can do, and how you fight. In OVERRRRIDER, we focused on making the movement mechanics not only the means of travel, but your means of combat.
Yeah.
And you have to manage your speed, you have to maintain it, and you have to make split-second decisions and be quick about it when it comes to combat, so you can figure out really quickly which robot you can attack and which robot you can destroy and which one you should be afraid of. There's a lot of different gadgets that you can equip. Each run will just generate a new map and is going to give you a random set of gadgets. You have a total of 4 gadgets that you can equip right now, and each gadget either changes your movement style or adds something to the mix. Like, for example, if you make tricks, you can shoot rockets. So in this case, you are more drawn to making tricks from a distance, and this is going to shoot rockets and kill enemies, stuff like that.
Okay.
So we're inspired by 3D Sonic games, SSX, Tony Hawk, but at the same time we're leaning into procedural generation, roguelike/roguelite gameplay with some story involved, but we are really focusing on the gameplay.